I think going forward, we should be getting back to what I would regard India's long-term growth potential, which is sort of close to 9%. Now, since the world is beginning to recover, but it may take a little bit of time, I can't be sure when we get back to 9%. But let's say in a couple of years, we should be back there.
Now, the idea behind the growth strategy is to have inclusive growth with social equity in a country that's still, notwithstanding a 350 million burgeoning middle class with consumer power, still has 200 or 300 million people at $1 a day and 200 or 300 million people at $2 a day. How do you actually eradicate poverty in a country this size?
Well, that's the whole point about inclusive growth, is to recognize that growth itself does a lot to bring people above the poverty line. But there are many people that would be left out if you purely ran a market-oriented growth strategy. And the whole idea of inclusive growth is that government has to do a whole lot of things to make sure that enough people, as it were, benefit from the growth process. So we have many schemes and strategies. I would say that, for example, doing a lot more on education is the best way of locking the lower income groups onto the benefits of rising income levels. Definitely expanding infrastructure and improving connectivity, more investment in rural infrastructure, because a lot of our people live in rural areas and we want to have faster growth of income.
I want to focus for a moment on perhaps the single biggest cause of poverty and the biggest problem in India, which seems to be in the field of agriculture. Why is it that with tens of billions of dollars of budget for agriculture and irrigation and going on for years and years, that neither the central government or the states seem to be able to deliver the irrigation systems that would lift people out of poverty? Why is that?
Well, first thing is that, in the earlier stages, there was a lot of, if you like, unutilized potential in the conventional irrigation system. So everybody concentrated on that. I agree that the states should have done a lot more earlier. Some states have, others haven't. And you might say this is either a strategic mistake or a governance failure. But I think in the last several years, the centrality of efficient water management has become very well understood. The employment guarantee program that we have, on which we are spending a lot of money, I mean several billions of dollars every year, the guidelines for the work to be done under that program explicitly say that water conservation works should have top priority.
Investment, foreign direct investment has dropped off during the crisis since the last quarter of calendar year 2008. How do you get foreign direct investments back up in India?
My expectation is that we will see a recovery in foreign direct investment. There wasn't much of a decline in direct investment. There was a bit of a decline in portfolio investment. I think that will also come back. We are looking quite actively to promote foreign direct investment into India. I think there's tremendous scope for it. Investors are welcome. And we have a huge task of building a rapidly growing economy, which is going to require a lot of investment. So we need the resources, and I'm sure that we'll be able to get them.
And with your average Fortune 500 CEO coming through India, you find yourself in occasional meetings with, what's the value proposition of India for those international investors and business leaders who say, well, yes, but China has better infrastructure, China is a bigger market, is more interesting to me than India, the China-India paradigm?
Well, there's no question that China is a bigger market. I mean, their economy is 3 times that of India. But both China and India are rapidly growing. India is a market of 1 billion people. And at the rate that we are growing, the so-called 350 million who are in, let us say, a middle-class status may find another 200 million joining them reasonably quickly. So anybody investing in India has to look at India as the second largest and second fastest growing economy amongst the so-called dynamic emerging economies. And I think that's quite an attractive proposition. The investment that we are getting now, say relative to China, is much lower than would be appropriate, even if you recognize that China is a bigger economy, because both are growing very rapidly.
And finally, in the international arena, India is playing a more active role in the G20, signaling new desire to cooperate on the Doha round, among other issues. How would you define the importance for India of G20 membership and for the outside world of having India in the G20?
I think it's been enormously successful in the last year because they were handling a crisis. So, I mean, if the test is, did the G20 do a good job of crisis management, I think they did a very good job. Now you get into a more difficult area once hopefully the crisis soon going to be behind us, that you're going to be tackling much more deep-seated problems. I have no doubt that you needed the broader consultation. I mean, the G8 simply did not reflect enough of the world's GDP, and certainly not enough of the growth in the world's GDP to be the key forum. But you know, when you go from 8 to 20, you have to work a bit harder to create a sense of collegiality, and that'll take a couple of years, I think. But it's a good move, I think.